The Carthaxian fleet didn't retreat. It multiplied. 2 days after the incident at the Dome of Accord, 3 additional warships appeared on the outer edge of Earth's diplomatic boundary, silent, positioned, watching. Their intent was unmistakable. Retaliation would come, not through negotiation, but through intimidation. Lynn stood at the edge of Unity Station's command deck, her face lit by blue navigation projections. It was an eerie calm, the kind that settled over a battlefield moments before the first strike. "Status on the fleet movements?" she asked. "Holding position," Sarah reported, her fingers flying across the console. "But they're triangulating. It's not a blockade, it's a trap. They want us to fire first," Rakeem muttered. "Classic move." "Then we don't," Lynn said. "But we make sure they regret standing there." Down in Sublevel 9, Decker and Marshal Tang had already begun rerouting power from the abandoned mag rail systems into defense nodes. Earth cities weren't designed for war anymore, but their framework still pulsed with the strength of old foundations. It was just a matter of waking the old skeletons. Jalen hovered near Lynn, trying to stay out of the way but soaking in every word. "If they attack, what do we do?" he asked. "We survive. We adapt. We use what they don't expect, ourselves." Across Unity Station, quiet preparations unfolded. Defense satellites reactivated from deep sleep. Orbital debris fields were recalibrated to respond to coded pulses. Underground bunkers tested their atmospheric shields. But the most important work wasn't physical. It was human. With quiet resolve, Lynn summoned the Earth Unity broadcast, a call the world hadn't heard in decades. A global message. First one in 40 years. She appeared on every screen, from lunar domes to floating stations over Titan. "To all our citizens, near and far, this is not a war. Not yet. But we are being tested. By those who think we've forgotten who we are. If you hear this, know that your past matters. Every lesson, every history, every struggle, we didn't erase it. We preserved it. Now we honor it. Stay calm. Stay connected. And stay ready." Then she ended it. No anthem. No rally. Just the truth. Meanwhile, the Carthaxians made their next move. One of their warships slowly entered the orbital lane near Mars Colony Theta. Not overtly hostile, but the warship's shadow loomed over Mars Colony Theta, triggering emergency drills and hushed voices across the colony's comms. It was the psychological game now. Rakeem frowned. "You want me to disable them? I can do it with 1 EM burst." "They'd spin that into an act of aggression," Lynn said. "We beat them at their own game, or we lose the council. Then what's the play?" She looked over at Sarah. "Hijack the ship." Sarah's eyes lit up like someone just handed her a toy from her old life. "Just say when." The team launched the operation at 0300 UTC. No explosions. No gunfire. Only code, silent, invisible, but lethal in the right hands. Sarah infiltrated the Carthaxian ship's comm system using a buried protocol from an obsolete human probe, one the Carthaxians had reverse-engineered decades ago. Within minutes, she had access to their primary display system. She broadcasted one thing, a historical reel from Earth's forgotten wars. Normandy. Saigon. New York in flames. The Battle of Io. Not to glorify violence, but to remind them that humans were born in fire. "Cut the feed," Lynn ordered after 60 seconds. Just enough to shake them. And shake them it did. The Carthaxian warship pulled back, just slightly, but enough. Enough for the entire galaxy to notice. But not all noticed favorably. The Galactic Council called for an inquiry. Earth was accused of psychological warfare. Lynn stood before them, again. But this time, she didn't speak in soft tones. "You want to punish us for memory? For refusing to be erased?" The Carthaxians brought soldiers to peace talks. They deployed ships at our borders. And when we reminded them what we are capable of, they flinched. That's not escalation. That's restraint. Some murmured agreement. Others fear. But the council did not vote. Not yet. That night, Lynn and her team met in secret. They'll keep coming, Asha said. They don't care about votes. They care about dominance. Then we need something bigger, Marshal Tang replied. Something they can't dismiss. Decker looked up from his corner. We have one shot left. Operation Echo? Lynn guessed. Decker nodded. The only protocol never tested. Buried because it was too poetic. What is it? Jalen asked. Lynn hesitated. We make them live our past. She laid out the plan. A stealth drone would carry an ancient piece of tech, a human combat simulation module, complete with environmental pressure replication, psychological sequencing, and full sensory war mirroring. The Carthixians would experience a slice of what humanity once endured, not in data, but in flesh, fear, fatigue. No one had ever dared use it. But now they would. They launched the drone disguised as debris. It latched onto the undercarriage of the lead Carthixian cruiser. Within hours, the simulation activated. The crew inside felt as though they were trapped in trench warfare. Cold. Fire. Screams. Artificial, but indistinguishable from real. Every corridor became a memory. Every breath borrowed terror. The Carthixians didn't respond for 30 hours. Then came the signal. One warship turned back. Then another. And then silence. Lynn received an encrypted message. 4 words. We did not know. Jalen read it twice. Is it over? No, Lynn said. But it's changing. For the first time, the humans didn't fire a single shot. But the galaxy began to remember. Earth had not forgotten how to fight. It had simply learned when to. When the first Carthixian cruiser withdrew, it was met with silence. But silence in space could mean dread, deception, or the calm before devastation. The second ship's retreat caused ripples through the political ether. Systems once neutral now watched closely. Systems that had forgotten the fire in Earth's blood. But the third ship, it didn't turn back. Instead, it activated a trans-dimensional field. Lynn, we've got a spike in localized gravitational flux near Cruiser 3. Sarah shouted from the command deck. Talk to me, Lynn said, approaching the screens. Is it a weapon? Not exactly, Sarah muttered, her eyes scanning rapidly. They're opening a corridor, possibly for reinforcements. Or something worse. Lynn studied the tactical map, her jaw tightening. Not on my watch. They launched the probe intercept system, a clever relic from Earth's asteroid deflection program, once designed to redirect doom without violence. It carried no weapons, but it could analyze and mimic field harmonics. Lynn was betting on timing. The probe reached the field. Began its mimic. The corridor destabilized. Field collapse in progress, Rakim reported. But then the Carthixian ship fired. A beam of pure distortion erupted from its hull. The probe disintegrated. The corridor snapped into place, just long enough. Something emerged. Not a ship. Not a being. A device. Floating. Cylindrical. Pulsing. What is that? Jalen whispered. Sarah's voice dropped. It's a memory erasure beacon. Lynn's stomach dropped. They want to wipe what's left of our history. The room fell silent. How long? Lynn asked. 40 minutes before it activates, Sarah said. But we won't know what it's doing until it's too late. Lynn turned to her team. Then we stop it before it starts. Back on Earth, Marshal Tang initiated Earth's last defense grid, Project Mirafall. It hadn't been tested in decades. The orbital prisms would focus light energy across frequencies to destabilize advanced tech, not to destroy, but to reveal and contain. Prism arrays aligning, Tang called in. If this works, it'll trap the beacon's signal and give us a targeting solution. In orbit, the prisms caught solar flare residue and split it into thousands of rainbow daggers. The beacon shimmered, blinked, and began to drift. Decker tracked it. Signal interference successful. We have a lock. But they had no weapons in range. Lynn exhaled. Time for something unconventional. She turned to Jalen. How fast can you fly a museum relic? Jalen blinked in disbelief. You mean the eagle? That thing's not rated for combat. It barely flies. Good, Lynn said. They'll never see it coming. The Eagle was Earth's first orbital lander, once a museum piece, now retrofitted with pulse-reactive plating and a magnetic net. Jalen launched from Unity's side bay, threading the relic through space debris and interference. Inside the cabin, every vibration felt like the past screaming for one more moment of glory. The beacon pulsed. 30 seconds, Sarah warned. I see it, Jalen said. Lining up. The Eagle tumbled, twisted, old frame screaming, but Jalen held the trajectory. At the last moment, he deployed the magnetic net. It wrapped the beacon in an iron embrace and cut its pulse. Dead silence. Unity erupted in cheers. Lynn smiled. Status? Beacon disabled, Sarah confirmed. It's not broadcasting. Good, Lynn said. Now send it back. They attached a small data core to the disabled beacon, footage of Earth's resistance, its restraint, its resolve. And a message. You thought we forgot. We didn't. We chose peace. But never mistake silence for surrender. The beacon, now their messenger, was launched back through the corridor. Lynn watched as it disappeared in a glimmer of light. Minutes later, the transdimensional corridor collapsed. The third cruiser blinked out of orbit. And then, for the first time, the stars were still. The Galactic Council reconvened within a day. This time, they voted. Unanimously, they sanctioned Carthix Prime for breach of peace protocols. Earth was commended for restraint, innovation, and memory preservation. Lynn declined the medals, the monuments, the parade. Instead, she stood before the Earth broadcast once more. Peace isn't weakness. It's the strength to hold back when the world begs you not to. But we must remember who we are, not to glorify our scars, but to ensure we never need to earn new ones. Humanity listened. And this time, the galaxy did too. Because Earth had not forgotten. It had simply learned to wait. They said the age of violence was over, that humanity had evolved beyond the need to fight. That war was a relic, buried with the old Earth nations, their flags faded, their guns melted. Peace, they told the children, was our new weapon. We traded swords for reason, missiles for dialogue. And for a while, the galaxy applauded. But peace makes you soft. And some people were watching, waiting. Ambassador Lynn, the delegation from Carthix Prime has arrived. She adjusted her sash and nodded politely, though her thoughts were 1,000 light-years away. Lin Su, once a military strategist, now spent her days in diplomatic chambers under the Galactic Unity Council's polished dome, sipping chilled water flavored with mint. Her sharp eyes, once tracking warships on deep space radars, now danced across treaty clauses and environmental accords. The transition had been jarring, like trading a sword for a scroll overnight. So when the Carthixians walked in, tall, skeletal, their bone-colored exosuits humming with internal heat, Lin's old instincts stirred. Ambassador, the Carthixian delegate rasped. We are here to discuss the territorial drift near Sector 9. Of course, she replied smoothly. But you've brought soldiers? The Carthixian made a show of looking surprised. Security. Standard protocol. You humans still honor those, do you not? Behind them, the security guards were not guards. Lin knew enough about posture, formation, and tension to see what they really were, trained combatants. And they weren't here for peace. The meeting began. And so did the test. It started subtly. Paper-thin jabs hidden in diplomatic speech. Your species, with its quaint reluctance toward violence, one delegate remarked. Lin smiled, even as her knuckles tensed. Yes. We've found intellect to be more scalable than aggression. The second jab came in data. Carthix presented star maps, claimed overlapping borders, trade routes infringed, unspoken lines crossed. It wasn't true. But truth didn't matter when someone was trying to provoke you. Still, she played along. For now. After the session, Lin pulled aside her aide, Jalen. A young man, soft-spoken, born after the last Earth skirmish. He didn't even know how to hold a blade. They're baiting us. Baiting us into what, ma'am? To lash out. To break protocol. To prove them right, that we haven't evolved. But we have. She gave him a long look. No, Jalen. We've just hidden it. She walked briskly down to the old archives, below Unity Hall, where few dared to go. Dusty wings of knowledge, darkened since the last war tribunal. Here lay Earth's history of conflict, tactics, strategies, declassified missions. It was like stepping into her childhood again. She ran a finger over the spine of an old field manual, The Art of Counterforce. Another, Urban Warfare in Cryozones. Her father had taught her from these before she ever knew how to write her name. And then she found it. A small box sealed. Labeled simply, Last Protocol, Terra. Inside were chips, encrypted with doctrines banned under intergalactic code. Contingency plans. Tactical models. Scenarios for what to do if peace failed. She pocketed one. Back at the apartment, she reactivated an old neuroport at the base of her neck, long sealed, now stinging as it lit up with data. Her eyes fluttered as strategies unfolded in seconds, entire war games compressed into flash memory. The next morning, she called a private meeting, not with the council, but with 5 humans still rumored to remember. There was Rakim, once a demolitions expert on Europa. Sarah, a cyberwarfare ghost. Asha, who ran orbital drills with cadets off the books. Marshall Tang, a logistics genius turned agri-minister. And Decker, well, Decker was a problem solver with a past he never admitted. They all looked older than they should have. Time had tried to tame them. Lin dropped the chip on the table. They're coming for us. They think we forgot what it means to stand, to defend, to strike only when it matters most. No one spoke. We didn't forget. We got soft. Comfortable. But not forgetful. Rakim chuckled. Thought I'd die before seeing another field op. Sarah just smiled. So what's the plan, boss? She leaned in. We don't throw the first punch. We let them think they've won. And then we remind them what Earth used to be. The next week, the Carthixian delegation grew bolder. They walked Unity Hall like they owned it. Guards posted where they shouldn't be. Lin filed reports. Nothing happened. Of course. Then came the breach. Unity's satellite relays went dark. Supply drones rerouted. Gravity fluctuations near the Human Archive district. All subtle signs. But war doesn't start with gunfire. It starts with confusion. Lin's team met in an old hydroponics warehouse. The perfect cover. And there, beneath a false floor, lay old Earth tech. Drones, pulse rifles, shielding belts, all mothballed, tagged for destruction. None of it ever was. These still work? Jalen whispered. Lin tossed him a shock baton. Guess we'll find out. They ran drills under night lighting. Simulated incursions. Remote hijacks. Silent takedowns. Every movement a whisper of Earth's old ghosts. Meanwhile, in public, Lin played her role. Smiling. Negotiating. Letting the Carthixians push. And push they did. A map leak. Human territory, accidentally, annexed. The outer colonies disrupted by sudden trade inspections. The council held an emergency session. Everyone spoke, except Lin. She simply stood. The people of Earth request one final attempt at resolution. One final meeting. No guards. Just truth. The Carthixians smiled too easily. Agreed. The stage was set. In the Dome of Accord, with walls that once echoed oaths of peace, the humans sat across from the bone-white forms of their challengers. Lin stood. You claim we've forgotten how to fight. That our history is erased. It is irrelevant, the Carthixian said. You cannot fight what you do not remember. Lin smiled. The lights cut out. In total darkness, every Carthixian weapon clicked, charged, ready to fire. And then, nothing. Their systems were blind. From the shadows, Lynn's voice. We remembered just enough. Then, in coordinated silence, her team moved. Non-lethal takedowns. Sleep pulses. Neural disruptors. It was over in under 60 seconds. When the lights came back, the Carthaxians were restrained. There were no injuries. Not a single life lost. Only silence. The council sat stunned. This is not an act of war, Lynn said calmly. This is an act of memory. A warning. And a promise. As she walked out, Jalen followed. Still shaken. Still unsure. I thought we didn't fight anymore. She smiled sadly. We don't. But we remember how. And for the first time in decades, Earth slept with its eyes open. A month passed. There were no more warships, no more corridors, and no more threats. The stars returned to silence, this time, a silence that resonated with earned peace, not passive quiet. Earth had not raised its voice, nor clenched its fist, but it had made itself heard. And that echo now lived in every system that had once dismissed them. Lynn walked through the Unity Gardens on Station 1, the artificial sun casting long shadows through branches genetically coded to resemble Earth's ancient oaks. Children ran beneath the trees. Some played with drones, others studied from digital slates. But one girl, just 7 or 8, was drawing. What's that? Lynn asked gently, crouching beside her. The girl looked up. It's a Carthax ship. And this is the little ship that stopped it. Lynn blinked. The child had drawn the eagle, net deployed, facing a massive, looming shape. You know that story? Everyone knows it, the girl said proudly. My teacher says it's why the stars are quiet now. Lynn smiled, touched by something deeper than pride. Hope. It had made its way into the next generation without fear, without blood. Later that evening, Lynn met the others in the old planning chamber. The war room was now a study lounge. What used to house combat projections now held floating shelves of historical archives and community proposals. But the teams sat in their familiar circle. So, Rakim said, sipping from a recycled glass mug, is this what peace looks like now? No, Sarah said, brushing a strand of silver hair back. This is what earned peace feels like. It has weight. And memory, Asha added. That's the difference. Decker chuckled. Let's just hope they don't forget again. They won't, Lynn replied quietly. Because we didn't teach them how to fight. We taught them when. Marshal Tang entered last, dropping a small box on the center table. Inside were faded patches, each bearing insignias from Earth's old defense forces. She nodded, her expression a blend of solemn respect and quiet relief. Time to send these to the archives. Where they belong. There was no ceremony. No fanfare. Just a quiet nod shared between those who had once prepared to lose everything, and chose, instead, to remember. Across the galaxy, ripples of Earth's defiance continued to reshape diplomacy. The Council began enacting protocols for cultural preservation and historical integrity. Memory was no longer seen as baggage, it became a foundation. And every planet that had once scoffed at Earth now revised its curriculum. No longer did students learn of Earth only as the birthplace of awkward diplomats and forgotten wars. They learned of a people who could burn, and chose instead to shine. Jalen, now a council observer, spoke at one of the new academies formed after the crisis. The most dangerous thing about forgetting your history, he said to a room of bright-eyed learners, is thinking you'll never need it again. He looked out the window. The eagle now hung in low orbit, restored, polished, but unarmed. Just a symbol. And sometimes that was enough. Back at Unity Gardens, the little girl had finished her drawing. She showed it to her teacher, who smiled and taped it on the classroom wall beneath the words. They thought we forgot. But memory was our sharpest weapon. Lynn passed by it days later and paused. The lines didn't need correcting. The details were already perfect in their simplicity. The message was clear. The future wasn't forged by vengeance. It was protected by remembrance. Because Earth had not forgotten. And now, the stars themselves would remember, echoing a truth too powerful to forget.